Hey everyone, and welcome to Focus Your Ad podcast, where we talk about Google Ads. My name is Dan, and I'm here with Glenn. In this episode, we will be discussing search impression share and how we can optimize it in a shopping campaign. This will also apply to other campaign type, but we are going to focus on shopping in this episode. We have touched on this topic before, but I want to go into the more practical side of it and talk about how we can use it in a day-to-day practice. So let's start out by defining search impression share. Glenn, do you want to start out with the definition of what search impression share is?
I sure will. So let's start out by the actual Google definition of what an impression is. So here goes. How often your ad is shown. An impression is counted each time your ad is shown on a search result page or other site on the Google network. Each time your ad appears on Google or Google network, it's counted as one impression. In some cases, only a section of your ad may be shown. For example, in Google Maps, we may show only your business name and location, or only your business name and the first line of ad text. So that basically gives us a definition from Google on what an impression is. So there's 3 different metrics that we're going to cover today that'll help us understand this. So search impression share is one. Search impression share loss to rank is another. And the third one is search impression share loss to budget. So search impression share is the percentage of impressions that your ads receive compared to the total number of impressions that your ad could get or what's available. So if you get 100 impressions, but could have potentially got 200, then the math tells us that you have a 50% search impression share. The next 2 are reasons why we didn't get 100% search impression share. So search impression share loss to rank is the second one. And it's the percentage of time that your ads weren't shown on a search network due to a poor ad rank in the auction. This is a bit more complex, but let's keep it simple and say that rank is mainly due to your bids. It can have many other factors, such as the landing page quality, but let's say that it's mainly due to how high your bid is. Share loss to budget. So search impression share loss to budget. This is a bit more obvious. This is the percentage of time that we are losing impressions due to budget. So maybe our budget is too low. These all add up to 100%. So an example of that, what I'm meaning there is 50% search impression share, 25% loss to rank, and 25% loss to budget. These are the 3 main ones that we're going to use to round your search impression share. So Dan, do you want to go into how we're going to use these in our ads?
Sure. So I'm going to do this by showing some examples here, because I think that's the easiest way we can go about explaining how to use search impression share and search impression share loss to rank or budget. So probably the easiest way is to give us an example here. So let's say we have a search impression share of 10%, and we could be selling, let's just pick a item. What do you think we could be selling? Any thoughts?
Bicycles.
Okay, so we're selling bicycles, and let's say we are getting about 10% of our search impression share. We're losing about 80% to our rank, and we're losing about 10% to our budget. So this tells me, if I was looking at these numbers, it would tell me that we're not getting much of our search impression share. And a lot of times with Google, you'll see under 10% they don't show you anything under 10%. So it could be 10% or less. In this case, we're saying 10%. Now, let's say we're not getting much there. And then we're losing most of it due to rank. And with rank, the majority of what we control with rank is our bids. The rest of it has to do with your landing page. It has to do with the product pricing. And there's a ton of factors that go into this, but the big one that we have control over is our bid. And if, say, for example, you have a better landing page than your competitor, well, then you don't have to bid quite as high to win the auction. Essentially, that's why it's called rank and not bid. But in this case, we'll simplify it down to rank equals bid. So we're losing most of our percentage due to rank. And then we have 10% loss to budget. So we're not losing much to our budget. So our budget seems fine in this case. In this case, I'm saying that we have no sales. So a very low percentage is due to budget and a high percentage due to rank. So in my mind here, I would be thinking that maybe we're not competitive enough. We're showing for terms that are lower in the funnel, we're showing for terms that are cheaper because we're only bidding a small amount. Because Google's going to go for, if say for example, someone's bidding 30 cents on the term bicycle. Now we come in and we're going to bid 10 cents for that same term. Well, they're going to show us when it's makes sense, when it makes sense that someone would want to spend less money. So for example, if there's a time period where you're less likely to convert, or maybe there's a certain term that comes in that's less likely to convert, we're going to get those terms versus someone that's willing to spend more money. They're going to get the terms that are more likely to convert. So there's a chance that being so restricted by our bid is causing us to get no sales. So I would be okay with decreasing my rank because it's lost a rank. I'm decreasing that in order to bring us back up and make us more competitive with this. So we'd lose more to budget, yes, and we'd probably still stay with 10% search impression share, but now we're a little more competitive. So this is one kind of scenario that we could have happen. Another scenario here, let's say we have a search impression share of 80%. We think, wow, we are doing really well here. We're getting 80% search impression share. And then we have 0% being lost to rank. And then we have 20% being lost to budget. So that 80%, so we're actually getting majority of that impression share. But the one downside, the one thing that could be happening is we could be bidding too high. So maybe we're being too aggressive and our ROAS might not be great. In this case, I'm saying that the ROAS is great. So if that's the case, then we want to continue to push this. And there's no reason why we wouldn't want to increase our budget because we're getting 80% right now. Why not bring it up to 90% as long as our ROAS is good? So this is one that would work well with a great ROAS. If it had a really low ROAS, then you would obviously want to pull back on the bids because we're bidding very aggressively in this case. So we would have to essentially pull back those bids, and that might increase our ROAS. In this case, we're saying we have a great ROAS, so we'd want to push this harder. This is a scenario where I think things are working really well. And this is a high converting campaign. If you're pushing things this hard and you're getting 80% of search impression share, it's working well for you.
So Dan, just to jump in there, a great ROAS, do you want to just explain again what ROAS actually stands for?
Yeah, for sure. So a ROAS is a return on ad spend. So this is the number that if you spend $1, you get $2 back. So we're saying if you had a 2x return on ad spend, you'd be putting in $1, getting $2 back. So if you had a great return on ad spend, that would mean you're doing really well compared to your break even. So your break even would be essentially whatever your margin is. If let's say it takes 50 cents. So you put in $1 and it takes 50 cents. Now you can't drop below that 50 cents. Otherwise you're not earning any money. So you'd have to have a higher ROAS than what your break even is. And there's a way to calculate your break even ROAS, which we're not going to go into right now, but maybe in the future we will go into how to calculate that. But you should know what your break even would be. And then a great ROAS for you might be different as compared to someone else. So a lot of times I find a great ROAS is around like 10 times return on ad spend is usually a great ROAS for Google Ads. But some companies actually need higher than that. And a lot of companies can go much lower than that. So a great ROAS might be 5x return on ad spend. And having it lower just means that you can spend more and you can have a much higher revenue because you can push your ads a lot harder than someone that requires to have 15 times return on ad spend, which they wouldn't be able to push their ads quite as hard. So let's go into example number 3. This one here, we're saying we have a 30% search impression share. So we're getting some impression share. We have 70% lost to rank. So we're losing almost all of it to rank. And then we have 0% lost to budget. So we're not losing any to our budget. So our budget's high enough. That's what it's telling me. Our budget's high enough. Our search impression share is pretty low, and which means we're losing all of it to rank. So our bids are also very low, or they're just on target. Like we're bidding just high enough to ensure that we're not losing any to budget. But the one downside here is we have no sales, according to this example. So we have no sales. And if that's the case, then again, we might be in the same scenario as before, where maybe we have to increase our rank decrease our loss to rank. So increasing our bids in order to push up our bids and lower that loss to rank, which will in turn increase our loss to budget. And the reason that these work together is because the loss due to rank, the loss due to budget, and search impression share all should equal 100%. So if one goes up, the other one has to go down. So they all work together. So as we decrease our loss to rank because we're pushing that bid up, that has to change somewhere else. So it's changing in the loss due to budget. That's going to go up. And then our search impression share might actually stay the same, or it might go up or down, depending. It's going to fill in the gaps. So, and then, I think that hopefully that makes sense for you in that case. But there's this case, I think it's just about increasing your bids and hopefully becoming more competitive again. So in the fourth example here, we have, again, a really low search impression share. And we're losing 0% to budget or to rank, and we're losing 90% to budget. So in this case, you can see, and it says it's a very low return on ad spend or ROAS. In this case, I think we are overbidding because we're not losing anything to our ranks. We're not losing anything to bid. So we're bidding really aggressively. So it's great. We're obviously getting sales because we have a ROAS. We're getting some sales. But if it's a low return on ad spend, we probably want to pull back a little bit on those bids. And in turn, if we're going to increase that loss due to rank, now that's going to have to change somewhere else. So we're going to start to decrease the loss due to budget. So we're going to start to gain our search impression share is probably going to go up in this case, because we're going to actually get a little bit more traffic this way because we're spending less per click. So we're going to be able to get some more traffic, and our search impression share will just naturally go up a bit. And then in return, and because of this, not in return, but because of this, we're going to see that the ROAS will actually go up as well. Having a low ROAS, it could be due to having a really high cost per click. And as that goes down, our ROAS number will go up, potentially. That's the way it should work in theory. Doesn't always work exactly like that, but that's the way it works in theory.
That sounds good.
The last one here, we have an alpha beta setup. So if you're not familiar with an alpha beta setup, this is a setup where we have two different campaigns and we structure them in a way so we can control the keywords. And this is the only way you can really get control of, or search terms, I guess I should say. This is the only way you get control of your search terms in a shopping campaign. So we have an alpha campaign that has the search terms that we want to target. So we're likely going to get better click-through rates. We're going to get better conversion rates. We're going to have a higher cost per click. And this is all going to be in the alpha. The beta is going to be where we get all the terms, everything that Google brings in. So we're going to have a lower click-through rate. We're going to have a lower conversion rate. And it's going to be, the quality of traffic is just going to be a little bit lower. And in this scenario here, we have, on our beta, we have 20% search impression share. We have 10% loss due to budget, 70% loss due to rank. And we're getting about 500 clicks in 7 days. So we're getting more clicks because the other campaign, the alpha, is getting only 10 clicks, but it has a 90% search impression share, 0% loss due to rank, and 10% loss due to budget. And you'd wonder, well, how I have 90% search impression share in the alpha. How do I have so much search impression share and only getting 10 clicks? Whereas the other one, I have 20%, I'm getting 500 clicks. The math doesn't work, but it does, because the way an alpha beta works is we're funneling certain search terms into the alpha. So out of the available impressions that we can get, the alpha is capitalizing on 90% of that, whereas the beta is only capitalized on 20%. So we're getting a lot more clicks in the beta because there's just more available traffic in there, but we're getting really highly targeted traffic in the alpha. So in this case, a search impression share of 90 may be a really good thing, and it depends on your return on ad spend. And if you're losing nothing to rank and losing 10% to budget, that's probably not a bad place to be if you're highly targeted, have a nice return on ad spend. Again, the same rules are going to apply. If you need to increase that ROAS, you can decrease the bids. You might be bidding a little too aggressively for this, but you can see how they kind of play together now. And it doesn't necessarily mean that just because you have a high search impression share doesn't mean that you're going to get more traffic, more clicks. Whereas because our beta is getting 500 clicks, our alpha is getting only 10 clicks. So there's quite a difference there. But in this case, this would be pretty normal to have 70% loss to rank in the beta and only 10% loss to rank in alpha. That's a normal setup. That would mean that things are probably working fine, depending on your return on ad spend. That's going to be the big golden metric that you're going to have to look at.
Well, there's quite a bit to this, but I think if people kind of study this and understand that it all adds up to 100% in every example, they won't take long to really be able to understand how this works and what needs to be done to correct those numbers or change those numbers.
Yeah, and it kind of gives you, it's almost like the gas pedal in Google Ads. It tells you how hard you should be pushing on the gas pedal. That's kind of like your rank, your budget, and your search impression share. It gives you more of an idea. If you're pushing really hard on that gas pedal, that's like putting you're not losing anything to rank, but you start to lose everything to budget, and that's like losing your fuel because you're burning it so quickly. So yeah, it's a little bit like driving a car, I guess, in a way, if you use that kind of analogy.
Yeah, for sure. Okay, so do you have anything else, Dan, or should we wrap this up at this point?
No, I think that's pretty much it. I just wanted to give some examples on search impression share, and hopefully that helps people to understand how to apply it in kind of a real life scenario.
Okay, so this is obviously a very important metric that we can use to help optimize our campaigns. Gives us a better understanding on what's happening with the campaign, and are we pushing the bids too high or too low? This all gives us a little more insight into that. So if you enjoyed this episode, consider hitting the subscribe button. With the great feedback we've been getting, we plan to make this a regular thing. Lots of great Google ad content to come. We may even do some episodes on Microsoft ads as well. So if you're overwhelmed with the task of working your Google ads, or don't mind, or you just don't have the time to dig this deep into it, keep in mind that Dan and I do run a management company that focuses on Google and Microsoft ads, where we manage and optimize ads for our clients. Feel free to reach out to us at any time at focusyouраds.com. Thanks again for listening, and we hope to see you on the next episode.